Hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and I'm so pleased you joined me for today's show. My guest today is joining me from Virginia, but don't let that fool you. He is actually a wandering nomad, which I love this. This is so cool. He self manages a single family home rentals in Virginia, but he deliberately schedules extended time periods traveling while still self managing his rentals. This is amazing. Here to tell us all about it, welcome digital nomad Ryan Mellon. Hi, Ryan.
Hey there, how are you? Thanks for
I'm
having me.
I'm good. So happy to have you on the show. I'm so excited to talk to another self-managing remote landlord. So let's just start at the basics. What is a digital nomad?
Yeah, so a digital nomad is someone who's location independent. They're working mostly off their laptop from wherever they are in the world, either working a 9 to 5 or running a business. So that's a digital nomad in a nutshell.
That's cool. That's cool. So how did you end up a digital nomad? I mean, I know a bit about your story. You started with some 9 to 5 jobs and then cut to today. Fill in the blank.
Yeah, so about 7 years ago, I was working two jobs, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, and that was quite a grind. They were both in-person jobs, restaurant working during the day and warehouse in the evenings, and I was just exhausted. I was reading some books like 4 Hour Work Week, vagabonding, and reading bloggers like Nomadic Matt that had just really inspired me to get out and do some travel and also to try solo travel for the first time. So, and I was able to get two weeks off from my job, from both jobs, and I flew to Costa Rica by myself. And I didn't speak any Spanish at the time. Never been out of the country before, other than just a quick trip to Mexico in a resort. Not um, Nothing too crazy. But yeah, I ended up staying in a hostel. Never stayed in a hostel before, meeting tons of other solo travelers, a lot of people that were traveling from all over the world and who have been traveling for months and years at a time. And that trip was really a game changer for me. I was zip lining through the jungles and climbing volcanoes and swimming in their crater lake and just had an amazing time. Came back to both my jobs, not really refreshed to go back to work, but going back to these two jobs, like, wow, I really need to make a significant change in my life. I really wanted to make travel something that was going to be a bigger part of my life. So I went back to work. About 6 months later, I was having a couple drinks with friends, my best friend and his wife, and they were saying that, when we retire, we're going to get in an RV and we're going to travel the US and we're just going to do it for like 1 year road trip. And I was like, well, I don't understand why we have to wait till we retire. Like, we can do this now. Like, while we're still young, none of us had kids at the time. And still neither of us do. But we had houses, we had cars, we had jobs, we had things that we had to think about. So we decided that we would just quit our jobs, save up enough money, quit our jobs, with the assumption that we would just have saved up enough money to make this trip so that we didn't have to work during that trip. We rented out our houses for 1 year leases and gave our vehicles to family and friends to keep an eye on for the year. And we got in the RV and we did a 1 year road trip, 23 states in that 1 year. And about halfway through the year, I realized that this trip was really coming to an end quickly. And I realized that I was going to have to probably go back to one or both my jobs when I got back. So, I had previously gotten my real estate license while working both my jobs, and I had dabbled little bit in real estate before, just doing a couple transactions, helping a few buyers and sellers buy and sell homes, but nothing on a large scale. Um, and I had a good friend who was an investor who was doing lots of flips. She was buying and renovating and renting houses, and she was doing a lot of volume. So I called her up in the middle of our US road trip and said, "Hey, is there any way I can help you find some properties and, make some money while I'm on this road trip?" And she said, "Absolutely." So I started helping her buy a lot of foreclosures. This was time there were a lot of foreclosures on the market, and we just targeted those. And we were just blasting out offers, 5, 10 a day to just
Wow.
houses eh, all all day, every day. And we ended up doing about 20, 25 deals in that last 6 months. And that's when I realized that, okay, I don't have to go back to my jobs. And it was before digital nomad was even a word. But when I got back from the US road trip, um, I realized that, yeah, I was a digital nomad and I could do this more long term. So, after a couple months being home, I launched out and flew to New Zealand and did 8 countries in 6 months and continued to work and um, started building a rental portfolio in the meantime. So I would leave during the winter, come home, buy a rental property or two or three sometimes, and renovate them, rent them out, and then head out for another winter each winter, new countries, new places. And so that's kind of how I became a digital nomad.
Yay! Good for you. I bet that scared the hell out of you.
Oh, well, it was honestly, it's not the way I would suggest to do it, like, just quit your job and build a business and figure it out along the way, but it all came together kinda just naturally, one piece at a time. So it worked out great, and it's been an amazing experience. Since then, I've worked from 23 US states and 22 countries over the past, 6 or 7 years.
That's amazing. Amazing. So you went to 23 different states on your RV trip. What about the remaining 27? Are you going to go back and do the rest?
So I have been to 34 of the 50 states.
Okay.
So I have 16 to check off. I've only worked from 23. But so um, I would love to get to the other 16 one of these days. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk logistics though. Your 1 year RV trip, that was well before Starlink and you were
Yeah.
working lots. So was it like an eternal quest to find Wi-Fi?
It was. We mostly stayed in campgrounds.
Ah, and they
And
had
which
internet.
had Wi-Fi, but
Yeah.
you never know what you're gonna get, right? You could be in a bad spot that has very little signal, or the Wi-Fi could just be terrible or non-existent. We tried to look at the reviews and see that beforehand, but it was challenging. I really mostly hotspotted off my phone
Mm,
90% of the time to do what I was doing. I was not on any video calls, regular phone calls, and mostly email. So luckily, you don't need too much bandwidth for that. But there were multiple times where we were in such a part of the country where we did tow a vehicle behind our camper, our
mhm.
RV. So we had a get around vehicle. So I would get in that and go driving for bars of of service on my cell phone, and then sit in the driver's seat with my laptop and shoot out some offers. So that did happen on multiple occasions.
Now, what do you do about Wi-Fi and data and phones traveling abroad? Is there an app you use or do you change SIM
So
cards? Like, how do you do that?
So for me, I do have T-Mobile's international plan, which
Mm,
is absolutely amazing. It works everywhere. The only place it hasn't worked for me was Cuba. But
okay.
understandably, there's, political and logistical issues
Yeah.
there, why that wouldn't work there. But um I get off the plane, I'm able to get regular phone calls to my US number, which is very important so that both my residents and um, anybody else who needs to get a hold of me, someone who might want to sell me a house, just they have no idea that I'm not in the country, and that's really
Right.
important.
Right. I do the same thing with people. I say, look, if you don't know that I'm not in Canada or I'm not in the States, if I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know, right? So
Yeah,
same thing. Well, in T-Mobile, to be transparent, because my listeners are both in Canada and in the US, T-Mobile is a US carrier in Canada. There's several carriers there as well. And this is my Canadian phone for my Canadian rentals that is on a US plan, but they do have other international plans as well. But I know there's a ton of apps that will allow World Traveler, and that means regardless of what cell carrier you're with, whether you're T-Mobile or Telus or Rogers or any of that, there's a ton of apps now that are like we're about to go to Australia. And
yeah.
so while you're saying, yeah, T-Mobile is the way to go,
Mhm.
because we have T-Mobile on our US phones, it doesn't have to always be the carrier. It can be some of these other
Correct.
apps as well. Yeah.
There's eSIM apps, like
eSIM. Yeah.
Airlo is a very popular one,
Hmm.
and so yeah, you can do that for your phone, but also internet. Other than that, for internet, when I'm looking for a place to stay, it's either Airbnb or Booking usually are my two
Mm.
favorites.
Okay.
Airbnb now allows the host to test their internet and upload their speeds directly verified to the listing. So that's nice.
Cool.
Booking allows the guest to rate the Wi-Fi of the hotel or apartment, specifically the Wi-Fi. So that's
Wow.
also another helpful thing. And I also travel with a global hotspot. So
Huh.
that is my backup plan C. Um, and I can buy data on the fly, like an eSIM, and use that. Um, and I can also put local SIM cards in it as well. And they have newer 5G versions. I'm still using this old 4G, like it's a block, it's a heavy block that still works everywhere. And so it's a lifesaver when um, th- my Airbnb Wi-Fi is out, or I end up at Starbucks and I need that, or I'm in an airport. So I do have a couple different plans for internet.
So you have your systems set up, which is pretty amazing. So let's talk about two things. I mean, you and I have talked about your travel. We've talked some about your real estate, but let's keep talking about travel. I just nerding out on global Wi-Fi. Like I think this is just so incredible, we're about to do it more. And I don't think we're the only ones that are going to do it more. I think because Wi-Fi is becoming so accessible with things like Starlink and different apps, these eSIM apps, there's going to be a lot more. But let's talk about travel and your whole concept of stop paying for flights. What's
Yeah.
that?
So it's called travel hacking. And just to be clear, mostly you're using it for um, you're using it for um, I'm sorry,
Travel hacking.
travel hacking is used for you're using credit cards to travel hack. Okay.
Okay.
So US, Canada, um, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand are about the five countries that have travel credit cards with rewards. So
Mm,
it's not
okay.
available for everyone. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Right.
But specifically for US and Canada, um, you can get, if you have a good enough credit score, at least here in the States, you can get credit cards to get points, which you can use to book flights for free. So, for example, they often will offer big bonuses to sign up. So you sign up, you need to spend a certain amount of money within the first 3 or 4 months to get the bonus. Then once you get the bonus, you also start to accumulate points, and you can either use that through the credit card's website to book flights on all different carriers, or you can transfer those points to your, let's say, Delta Rewards or Air France account, or it's very flexible. So
Hmm.
over the years, I usually get 1 to 2 new cards every year, bonusing cards. I have them for all of my companies and LLCs so that every dollar I'm spending on marketing for the coaching or repairs for the rentals is all coming back in free travel. And I haven't paid for a flight in many, many years. The only time I pay for a flight is if it's like less than $150. If it's a cheap flight on a small carrier that doesn't take points, let's say I'm in Southeast Asia and it's Vietjet, they're not going to take points, but the
No,
flight's going to be $110. So
very cool.
that's one of the ways to get free flights is just to use that system and pay for everything on your cards. Don't carry a balance. That's very important.
Mhm.
If you're going to carry a balance, it's not going to be worth the points because now you're paying interest. So pay your cards off, every month. But just utilizing cards for all your expenses accrues tons and tons of miles for free travel.
Very cool. Now, what about I've heard this and I saw that you were talking about this as well, a digital nomad visa,
Mhm.
like a State Department visa. Like if we're going somewhere, what is the difference between just a regular tourist visa and like a digital nomad visa? And is that like a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So up to 55 countries now have come out with the digital nomad visa. I'm working on getting mine for Bali applied to now. And so the difference is that generally it's a much longer visa, usually
Hmm.
depending on what your passport is, of course, and where you're going. Your visa is going to be a 30-day to up to 6 months at a time, depending on the country, for you to come in and be a tourist. And technically, you're not supposed to work on any of these
Mhm.
visas.
Okay.
And it generally it means you're not supposed to work like in person in the country, like at for a job of that country, for an employer of that country. Um, but oftentimes remote workers can kind of fly under the radar and just be working remotely still on that tourist visa. But the digital nomad visa is designed for digital nomads to come in and stay longer and be more a part of the community and to be also a little bit more protected legally because they know you are working remotely and stay longer and enjoy a place longer it because it's bringing higher income earners often to these countries.
Right. Interesting. So tourist visa, I mean, nobody wants people who are tourists to come in and take physical jobs in these other
Right,
countries, right? Like that happens
right.
all the time. We're constantly across the US Canadian border. It's the number one thing you see at both borders of we are protecting our jobs, we're protecting our trade. So this digital nomad visa is, hey, I am going to work remotely, declaring that. But as a result, you get to stay longer. And let's face it, I agree. You get to dig into the community. You get to actually invest your time, your effort, and get to know your neighbors, right? Like I'm assuming that's what you've done at your locations that you've been at. And I know you're about to go to Bali. So, is
Yeah,
that
you get
part of
to
it?
slow down and
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about but before if you wanted to stay in a place like Bali that's um usually you get just a 30 days right
Yeah.
up front visa upon arrival. If you want to stay longer, you have to do a border run, which is literally leave the
Yeah.
country and come back. So you have to get on a plane and come back and then reset your visa. Now you're good for another 30 days. So it eliminates that headache and that concern of like, what if I leave stuff in the country and somehow I don't get back in or whatever. So it
Right.
eliminates those border need for border runs that a lot of
Right.
people do.
Well, and we can talk more about travel. Michael and I are always enamored with, different ways that you can travel hack and different countries to go to and what's the most unique thing and what's on our personal bucket lists. I personally love ancient technology. And so, the staircase sundial that's in India that's accurate to like 15 seconds is just mind blowing to me. And it's like thousands of years old. Ancient Egypt, the Grand Egyptian Museum just opened. All that speaks to me. Like, I love that stuff. That's all on my bucket list. Now, whether they're all safe or not, that's a different story, but we're always searching for that. So we can talk about travel all day long. And Ryan, I suspect we will because I think the listeners are going to really enjoy this. But let's talk about the stateside stuff. Like, in the
Sure.
meantime, you've got rentals and you're self managing,
Mhm.
but you're not even on the continent. Like, how does that work? How do you set yourself up for that?
Yeah, so Um, you need to have systems in place. It's very important that things run smoothly while you're gone. And for me, I have a season that I'm home. I'm always home during the summertime. It's a good time for me to be home. I love the weather. I live on my sailboat. It's a just good time to be home. So during that time period, that's when I have my leases generally expire or between March and October. So I don't allow leases to expire during the winter when I'm usually gone. So that cuts down on turnovers. If I'm gonna buy a new property, usually it's gonna need a full renovation. I want to be there for that. I'm doing that during the summer as well. And then it's ready to go for winter. You need to have s- good contractors that you can call from the other side of the world and say, "Hey, the toilet's broke," or "Hey, they have outlet that's not working. Can you go by?" And that that it's going to get done and it's going to get done right. So that's really important. Um, Building systems. All my guys pay uh, rent online. It's in their lease. It's the
Okay.
only option they have. They don't have any other option but to pay rent online. Um, I also have, um, I do that through apartments.com,
Okay.
and that's free service. Um, they also submit any non-emergency maintenance requests through there.
Okay.
And I like that because if I'm 13 hours ahead and they have something that's not an emergency, I'm just going to get an email about it. And when I wake up next day, I can take care of it. But more than that is you have this track record of them putting in a request for maintenance and then you saying it's been completed on this day and it's closed out and you have a paper trail.
Great. It's written. What do you know?
Yeah. Well, it's important because even if you think you have a really good relationship with your resident, there can be a time where they decide to move and then they drop a list of maintenance things on you and then they say, "Hey, you know, you haven't been fixing any of this. I don't owe you rent." I've had that happen. And I can just like pull up the entire list of every time they requested something and we fixed it in a
Yeah.
reasonable amount of time, always. So it protects you from any of those type of allegations.
So what happens if in the middle of winter you've got some
Hmm.
kind of emergency or there is a repair and you've got to set up a call with your contractor or whatever, and then what? Like, how does the
Yeah,
contractor get in? Does the tenant have to meet them, or what's the system for that?
Yeah, on a rare occasion, I might get a call in the middle of the night, or I might need to be up at like 4 a.m. to wire some money for a deal or something like that. But it doesn't happen too often. But let's say I need to get a contractor in, the resident is at work,
Hmm.
and my contractor's ready to go. I have a lockbox hidden on every house. It's not available to the residents. If they do get locked out of the house, I will make it available to them if I'm out of town. But that's it. Because I don't want them to know about it because the key might never make it back into
Right,
the lockbox. But
right.
then my contractor can go by, fix the toilet while they're at work and while I'm on the other side of the world.
That's pretty amazing. Well, tell us a little bit more about some of the other systems that you have set up to support this, especially as a self-managing landlord. Like, for example, when you're doing your renovations, do you have a strategy of the paint that you use or the flooring that you
Mm.
use? I mean, do you do some kind of standardization?
Yeah, overall, I like to use a lot of the same colors and a lot of the same flooring. Um, so like ceiling paint, wall paint, and trim paint. They're three different paints, but we use them all the same on every house. And so I use Evernote a lot. Evernote is my favorite. It's like my second brain. I can just search paint and it's going to come up with my one, two, three colors. I can even send that link to my contractor and
Hmm.
say, here you go.
Meaning the paint
And
recipes, right?
yeah, absolutely. It'll either, if it's something that's on the shelf, it's gonna be a picture of it. If
Right.
it's something that needs mixed, it'll actually be the barcode that Home Depot will
Oh,
scan to make the paint for
nice.
um, that light gray silver that I have on all the walls.
Easy peasy. Oh, I've
Yeah.
not heard about the barcode idea. I've got the recipes, but not the
Yeah.
barcodes. That's
Yeah,
something new.
so when you get the can of paint, usually they'll have a barcode on them, at least like Home Depot and Lowe's do. And so I'll just take a photo of that and then they can actually just, it's like a barcode, QR code, and then they can literally just scan it and make sure that there's no way they can't get the wrong thing.
That's amazing. Now, Ryan, you and I both know that life happens, and even with a 1-year lease, and it's in the middle of winter, that people get sick, life happens, people have to break leases. What happens when you end up with a vacancy or even a move out in the middle of
Mhm.
winter? How do you handle that?
It has happened. And that's when I go to my network. I have other investor friends that I have called in favors from and say, "Hey, can you go by and just videotape the whole place if they're just gone?" Right?
Hmm.
Then I can get a sense of how bad it is, what we need to do.
Sure.
And just from one video walkthrough, I can make a punch list and I can start calling my guys. And a lot of stuff, a lot of basic stuff. I have the electrician who's licensed. All my licensed guys are like my plumbers, my electrician, my HVAC guys. But like everything else is usually one or two handymen that do a lot of different things: paint, fixing doorknobs, changing out light bulbs, replacing blinds. So a huge list is going to the handyman, and then there might be only a few specialty things like plumbing or HVAC that we need to handle. And so it rarely happens, but it has happened in the past, and I've been able to navigate it pretty well. I've never had to get on a plane and come back due to a vacancy.
So I want to ask you let's finish with let's recover. So the person who had to give their notice, they broke their lease, life
Mhm.
happened, they weren't able to not break their lease, they've left. Your contractors have gone in, they've recovered the unit. How do you pay them remotely? Is this something that you can bill pay them, or do you Zelle them, or Venmo in the US, e-transfer in Canada?
Yeah, yeah. So Cash App is my number one.
Cash App. Okay.
Cash App, but I have Venmo, I have Zelle, and I have Bill Pay.
And that works
So
on the internet.
it,
So it doesn't
yeah,
matter that you're on the other side of the world.
I can pay them all, and they can send me photos of the work that they've done to prove that they've done it. And
Okay.
then I can also have people check up on them as
Sure.
well.
So
Um,
let's go
so
ahead, keep going. Sorry.
that works pretty well.
Awesome. Awesome. So then you got to get that unit re-rented.
Hmm.
So then what? Like,
Yep.
how do you do your
So
ads? How do you do showings?
Yeah, so I put everything up on Zillow. Zillow is the number one spot for me to put my rentals on. And so every property's already been listed through there. So the photos and everything, usually I have professional photos done right after the renovations. And as long as there's not been any major changes, I just reuse those photos um, over time. I
Mhm.
also have a video in YouTube of a video walkthrough of every property as well. So when they come in and they send me, I want to see this place, I say, okay, no problem. Here's the virtual walkthrough. And so they can look at it there. I say, you're welcome to drive by as well, but we're not doing any in person showings until I at least have a Zillow application or one of my internal applications filled out. Both can
Yeah,
be done online. And so I will say that that cuts down on a huge amount of traffic of people coming through, a lot of tire kickers. A lot of
yeah,
people can just drive by, see the neighborhood, see the walkthrough video, see the photos, see the rent, and say, hey, all right, I'm willing to fill out an application. It takes 10 minutes. And so I'll send out the application to them, and that's done through Loop, which allows for digital signatures, lease
mm,
signings, and everything. So once they say they want to do that, as long as I get that, um, at that point, I will set them up and give them the lockbox code. I'll text them and I say, I got your application. Here's the lockbox code. It's good for only today. Can you send me a photo of your ID just so I can verify who I'm giving access to? And they
right.
do. And they go by and check it out. And if they want it, then we'll finish the application process, which is done completely online. And I will say about 70% of the people I send my internal application out to don't even fill it out. So they're automatically eliminated.
Right,
So that really just helps, you know, um, weed out people that aren't that serious and that are wasting my time.
right.
So I've been able to fill places without ever meeting them. The only thing is that on move-in day, you need someone to give them the keys and you need to do a walkthrough. So I
Mhm.
do have someone available. The trustee to my trust, which own my properties, he's usually pretty good at that. It's just a checklist. Here's
Sure.
We have the keys already from the tenant left them on the counter or whatever. We change the locks as well, so we get the keys from the lockbox, and he'll take the lockbox off, do a quick walkthrough with them, send that to me by email, do the lease signing all through email, get the deposit, get rent set up to apartments.com. So it can be done. Everything can be done without you there.
That is amazing. And I do it, but I'm learning stuff from you, and I'm already a remote landlord, but what you're saying is just incredible. Now, what about mail? Like, you're gone for months on end. How do you do mail?
Yeah, mail's a hard one, and there are some online services that allow you to get mail, and they automatically like scan and forward it to you. The problem with that, like here in the States, is like it's not often not considered a physical address, and you can't have businesses out of them. They can't be like your residential address, right? If you're traveling a lot, and they can't you like if I wanted to sign up, like do banking or like get a new credit card or something like that, they're not compatible with that. So I have a commercial box with the UPS store.
Mm,
So it's actually like a PO box, a post office box.
yeah.
And so I'll have someone go by once a month with the key and get the mail out, and they open everything up, they take photos of it, and they text it to me or email it to me or scan it and send it to me. And most of it's junk. Most of everything I've signed up for is coming through my email, but still, like,
Mhm.
the city sends tax stuff out through mail. If I get like a violation for like tall grass or something, tenant
Right.
didn't cut the grass, it's gonna come in the mail. So that's how I handle the mail. It's not too bad. Even one just checking on it once a month has been enough. I mean, on some close deadlines sometimes, but once a month is usually good, and then I just pay him like each $25 each run,
Yeah.
to do the mail once a month.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, I know that you also made the decision, throughout your portfolio career, you do an analysis of, what's the best performing property, is it the size, is it the location, is it the type, is it, multifamily versus single family, whatever. And you've downsized over time, and so have
Mhm,
I.
mhm.
And when you downsize, what's your criteria when you decide to sell? Or do you have one?
Yeah, so it's usually multiple things. Oftentimes, if there's um a property that's just a consistent pain in
Mm,
whether it's the residence or the maintenance or the ability to get it rented, or I had a duplex that just the combination of all those things. This thing was just killing me. It was everything else is running great, but like the people I was getting in there just would not pay rent. It had just really bad vibes, a lot of repairs, this, that, the other, just always just kind of like draining me, like energy wise and money. So, and it was actually the very first rental property I bought. So was still a new landlord, but I ended up just selling it for, well, like double what I paid for it when I bought it before. So I was able to get some cash back in and get rid of my problems all at the same time. So,
gotcha. Okay. Well, and let's switch gears here. You are also starting a podcast. Tell us about
yeah.
your podcast.
Yeah, so hopefully coming out no first week in November. We're working on a lot of the last details now. We have some episodes already lined up, but it's called Digital Nomad Nation. And so I'll be interviewing digital nomads because everyone's story is so different, why they became digital nomads, how they became digital nomads, and what they do for work is so very different. So it's going to be meant to inspire people to live the location independent lifestyle.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
If a listener wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Sure. So my website is www.thedigitalnomadcoach.com. And I am also the Digital Nomad Coach on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Beautiful. I love it. And I know my listeners are out there, and I have a feeling that this episode is going to get listened to a lot because you gave out so many tips on self-managing and setting up systems so that you don't collect rent. Like there's no physical person walking around collecting rent. I mean, there's so many systems that you talked about in this episode. I can't wait to hear the feedback from the listeners. This is great. But any parting thoughts?
Yeah, if you have any interest in living location independent, I also do offer one-on-one coaching.
Mm,
And on my website, thedigitalnomadcoach.com, I have a free 35-page guide called 7 Ways to Become a Digital Nomad. Kind of gives you a taste of all the different ways to be a nomad, like sailing around the world, van life, co-living, being a hybrid nomad like me, 6 months, in at home, 6 months out of the country. So yeah, check that out. It's free.
very cool. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Ryan. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I really had a good time, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.